Well, the first thing I think you need to understand is that these people that you're comparing yourself to, you don't really know very well, and what that means is that you see their shiny outside, but you don't see the reality of their life. Maybe you're in California, see someone speeding down the road in a convertible Porsche, and you think, oh man, what a lucky bastard. And the truth of the matter is that he's thinking about wrapping his expensive sports car around the next cement pillar that he comes close to. You can't tell, and people have hard lives, and even people who are comparatively fortunate have hard lives. And so the ideal that you're observing that makes you jealous and resentful is in large part an illusion that's created by your own mind. I can give you just one example. I know a fair number of extremely wealthy people, and most of the people I happen to know are people who've made their money themselves. And I tell you, man, they have a burden of responsibility that would crush me, would crush the typical person. They're just working flat out, like 90 hours a week, and they have thousands of people depending on them. And they have their money, and they have their status, and that's not nothing. But don't be thinking that there isn't a price to be paid for that. They don't see their families, they're often divorced, they don't see their children grow up, and they don't have time off. Now, there are wealthy, what would you call, playboy types, I suppose, who live out the dreams of wealth of a foolish 14-year-old, but they're not that common, and you have to be careful of what you're jealous of because you don't really know what it is. And then the other thing that's kind of useful is to understand that you're different from everyone else. And this is especially true as you get older. When you're 17 or 16 or something like that, comparing yourself to other people makes a certain amount of sense because 16 and 17-year-olds, they're kind of the same, which is why when you go off to university, you can make friends so quickly. It's like, I'm just about 60. It takes me like 15 years to make a friend now, as opposed to the 2 months that it took when I was 17. You're quite different from other people, and you shouldn't be comparing yourself to them because they're not like you. They don't have your family, they don't have your temperament, they don't have your troubles, they don't have your abilities. The only person that has those is you. And this is why one of the rules, I think it's rule 4, is compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. And see, that's a game you can win because you could be a little better today than you were yesterday. And that's a good thing. You're a little better. That's a good thing. And no doubt there are some things that you could improve. If you sit and meditate for any length of time about what you're not doing optimally, answers will spring to mind. You could be getting up earlier. You could be watching YouTube less, unless they're my videos, in which case you could be watching them more. Comparing yourself to who you are now, that's a game you can win. And I've seen this be effective in many, many cases in my clinical practice, for example. It's like you take stock of where you are, what your advantages are and what your disadvantages are, and then you start with a little humility on the path of incremental improvement. And incremental improvement compounds. And so you can get a long ways. And then it's, because trajectory in some sense is more important than position for human beings. I mean, if you're starving to death and deal, that's not the situation that I'm describing. But if you've got the bare necessities of life, and so you're not surrounded by absolute privation, what you really want is to see that you're on an uphill path, something that's got the right slope. And you can start anywhere on that path. And you can improve 0.5% a day or 0.25% a day, and you think, well, that's not very much. It's like, it's 100%. If it's 0.25% a day, it's 100% in 4 years. And that doesn't count compounding, which means it's actually going to happen a lot faster. I think that the possibility that you can make yourself slightly better on a continual basis I think that's something that's accessible to everyone. I think that's equivalent to leading a virtuous life. And I talked about the terrible catastrophe in some sense of differences in intelligence and differences in conscientiousness and so forth, and the downside of the meritocracy. But there is something to be said for virtue and truth, and that is one thing. Another thing that I've noticed about people who've been phenomenally successful is that they really do everything they can to live a truthful life, and that you can get a bloody long ways by being honest. It's really something. And so